All right, we're back for our featured segment, and today we're going to be talking about shared master data, which is a new feature of Business Central, and it really helps with the whole uh, multi-company aspect of Business Central. There's different ways you can have single company, traditional multi-company. Now you can have the shared master data company, as well as what Ken likes to refer to as the single company, multi-company um, situation. So, without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Ken, and Ken's going to try to explain this as eloquently as he could because I would screw this all up on a podcast. So,
Yeah, let's go. So yeah, master data management is this new feature that's coming out in 2024, Wave 1, version 24, out officially in April, as we
should be
as we just talked about. And this new feature is, and I'm kind of just reading here a little bit, just very briefly from the Microsoft Learn function. It's available online. So it's basically this feature is intended for scenarios where you want to move the setup data from one company to another company in the same environment. And it's built as a data synchronization engine that lets you keep the data between those companies synchronized after the initial move. So the scenario, right, we're going to talk about a couple scenarios here where this would be useful, right?
Okay.
This is obviously it's a multi-company scenario. So you have one Business Central environment that you're operating in, like your one production environment, and you have multiple companies in there. So this is a new feature that gives, I think the overall, it gives organizations another option for setting up and managing their multiple companies together is really what it does. There's always been multiple options available in how you do it. This I think adds kind of a nice new feature in actually creating a new option for people. So what we're going to try to do here is talk about, we kind of have four scenarios that we kind of want to talk about. And then what we'll do is sticking with our tradition here on a shot of Business Central and a beer, we are going to use the Cronus Brewery organization as an example to kind of talk about the scenarios and in which scenarios each multi-company setup might fit or be best for.
Sounds good to me.
Right?
Anytime we can inject more beer into the conversation.
So let's start with the simplest scenario, right? And just this is more of a baseline scenario. A single company, right? One legal entity. And what's key here, when I say one legal entity, this is an organization or entity that requires its own balance sheet, its own self-balancing trial balance, right? Okay. So that's when we say legal entity, it's something that you're going to produce a balance sheet for. That company may have to file its own tax returns, right? Pay income tax based on that legal entity. So we're going to start, the baseline scenario is going to be single company. And we're just going to call this the Cronus Brewery, where we have a single legal entity that brews beer at 3 locations. There's 3 breweries, maybe, one in California, one in Chicago, and one in Florida.
Now, if it were overseas or anything, would it have any sort of impact on this?
Yep, great question. It could, because that other country may have a separate set of localizations. So if in the UK, for example, or Switzerland, they may be operating in their own separate environment because their environment has those Swiss or UK localizations built in. So in that case, they're going to be in a completely separate environment. This multiple shared company shared data, not applicable.
Gotcha.
They're going to be kind of on their own standalone. So I'm picking within one country or localization. You've got one legal entity, 3 locations. That's pretty simple. It's one Business Central production environment with one company in it. And you could still use dimensions to track sales or activity by location, by territory, department, cost center, whatever dimensions you typically might use. But you cannot produce a balance sheet by dimension.
Just
One of the key takeaways, standard Business Central, is dimensions aren't for producing company balance sheet results.
so this option's fairly common, would you say, or no?
Very common. Probably one of the most common scenarios is that it's just, you're operating one legal entity in Business Central. Okay. All right. Now, the second scenario is what I'll call a traditional multi-company scenario. So we have some common ownership, right? Some owner who owns multiple legal entities. And in this example, we will say that company 1 is a brewery, right? They're making beer, bottling it. Company 2 is a separate company that purchases that beer from the brewery and distributes it to retail outlets.
Okay.
Right? Separate company though.
Yeah,
And maybe that distribution company also distributes other products, right? So they're distributing the Cronus Brewery's beer, but maybe they also do snacks or other beverages or whatever.
So completely different business space.
Totally different business. Gotcha. And then there's a third company that's a pub. So it's a bar or restaurant type scenario, right? And obviously they're buying some beer from the distribution company because they serve the Cronus beer at their pub. But then they've got all this other stuff, right? Point of sale system but
another completely different business.
Completely different, run by different people, managing everything independently. Okay. Right. So imagine in this scenario, you're going to have 3 different, right, groups of people managing each of these 3 companies. And there could even be a 4th company, which is like a real estate holding company that has a very simple chart of accounts with a few transactions in it. That's your traditional multi-company scenario. And the key thing about this one is that all of the data in each of those companies is completely independent of the data in the other companies. So the brewery has its own list of customers and vendors and items because it has to buy yeast and grains and sugar and things like that to make the beer, right? Bottles and caps and things like that. The distribution company has its own customers. It has its own vendors. Its items are the bottles and kegs of beer that it's purchasing from Cronus Brewery, right?
So they have no need though to share any data.
No, completely separate chart of accounts, completely separate items, customers, vendors, transactions, and even of course the pub, right? Yet again, a completely separate chart of accounts and everything. Now, in this traditional environment, right, all of the data, the setup data and the transactions are all independent. You could set up a 5th consolidation company where you map all of those GL chart of accounts to a common consolidated chart of accounts, and you combine the general ledger activity to produce a rolled up financial statement. What was the total income of all these entities together so that you can present it in a single view? So that's the traditional, what's always been there. Many of our customers run the scenarios where they have these companies. They may or may not do the consolidation, right? You could argue that in this case, I don't really even care to see a consolidated financial statement with the real estate company and the brewery and the pub all combined. I just want to look at them maybe independently. So what's new in 2024 Wave 1 is this new shared master data management functionality. Now, what this allows you to do is when you initially set up Business Central, you can flag certain tables as shared data and then define which companies that data should be shared and synchronized with. The common example here is maybe a franchise type scenario.
So, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking was a franchise scenario. But my question is, and maybe you don't know the answer. So this seems to fit perfectly for a franchise scenario. What are they doing now or before this was available? Which did they just use a traditional multi-company layout or do they have to?
Yep. So I think what people may have, what you probably had to do if you had a, like, let's say, so what do we talk? First of all, let's clarify. When we say franchise model, what we're really saying is that
Like McDonald's.
we could have one Business Central environment set up with 50 different companies running in it. And each company is a completely independently owned entity. So they need their own balance sheet. They need their data to be segregated from other people's data. But there's some commonality. We want every franchise to use the same chart of accounts, have the same dimensions, the same posting groups, maybe even the same list of vendors to start with, or the same vendors or the same items, because they're all going to sell the same items.
Right.
You know, Jimmy John's sandwich shop, don't they all sell the same items? Yep. Right. So that's what this new feature allows you to do, is flag that GL accounts, dimensions, vendors, items, posting groups, payment terms codes, payment methods. You define that list of tables that are shared or common, and then the system will always keep all of the companies in sync. When you add a new vendor to your main company, whichever company you've identified as your main company, it will automatically synchronize that data out to all the other companies.
So what are they doing now, though?
Today, they would have to create a company. Let's call it template company.
Oh, gotcha.
And someone manually has to go in there. They still would have to update that. And then on day one, if a new franchise starts, they would take that copy and use that to build the new company.
Wow.
So at that point in time, they're going to have all of those new ones. But if a new vendor gets created, you've already got 50 companies. Those new companies out of the box would not automatically have that new vendor added to their environment.
And that could be a big problem. Yeah.
So what do? If they want that, that would have to be custom functionality to say, hey, when I'm in company template and I add a new vendor, automatically go add this vendor record to every company out there.
So it could be done.
It could be done through customizations, like a custom extension.
Yeah.
This now adds this as standard functionality in Microsoft.
It's pretty nice.
Out of the box.
I like it.
Yep.
Especially, right, if you're a franchisee or a franchise.
Yep.
I'm sure it's applicable to other businesses as well.
Right. Yeah. I think franchise is this. It kind of it's the easiest example. In our example, of course, we have a chain of pubs, right? The Cronus pub, and there's 20 locations that they open Cronus pubs at, right? You would want each one of those pubs to have the same chart of accounts, vendors, setups, so that data is common and easily understandable across all these.
Now, would it be difficult? Like, let's just say for example, McDonald's, right? It's a franchise, but McDonald's sell different products locally compared to. So, would they be able to utilize this even with that, or would they not be a candidate?
I don't think so, because like if you're saying like the McRib is being sold in the Chicago area, but it's not maybe available in the New York area right now. And that's a new product that didn't exist.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
To use the feature, you would have to add the McRib into your master company.
Right.
And then it would be visible in both the New York and Chicago locations. Now, New York may not be selling it. They may not be using it or recording sales or whatever, but it still could be in their item list.
So
that wouldn't necessarily hurt anything. But I think to answer your question, if you wanted Chicago to have the McRib sandwich on their item list, but New York does not, I think that would not then be, you could not synchronize that data.
Gotcha.
In some, like where the McRib is not synchronized to all locations, but
Right.
the McFlurry, Oreo McFlurry is on an item by item basis. You can choose which companies you want to share the master data with, and you don't have to share the master data with every company. But then those companies would have to manually add their own items in this
Gotcha.
example, right? So table by table, company by company, it's a all or nothing proposition.
And I would assume eventually you might even be able to build extensions or something to do something somewhere along.
You could. My argument for your question and scenario would be you would use the master data feature, you'd add the McRib, and it would be visible in all companies. They just have to, it's going to be in their data. Tough crap.
Yeah, not a big deal.
Right. Right. So that's the third scenario. Last scenario. People are like, what? The last scenario. So in all of these scenarios that we've talked about so far, or actually the last two, right? The traditional multi-company and the new shared master data scenario, all of the transactions, the ledger entries and the posted documents are all still existing in each individual company.
Okay.
So that means that to get to run, if you wanted to see a list of all the sales invoices across all the organizations, you would actually have to pull data from 3 separate companies and then combine it together in a Power BI data set or something, right? So you have kind of 3 separate databases, if you will, or companies within that environment. The last scenario is where you say, yes, we have shared master data, but we also have shared corporate services or HQ headquarters services where, yeah, I have 10 companies, but those companies, and they record their transactions in each of their companies, but we have a shared services is what most people refer to this as, where corporate is managing all of the accounts payable processing, accounts receivable processing, maybe fixed assets, financial reporting. And so there's activity potentially across multiple companies. Corporate's cutting a check to pay some vendors where the first invoice is for company 1, the second invoice is for company 4, and the third invoice is for company 9, right? But they want to cut one check. And you're like, how do you do that, Ken? What do you got?
Be difficult, right?
Well, it would be difficult with standard Business Central out of the box.
Right.
However, there are apps available for this. So one that's relatively common, people may have heard about this one, is an app called Multi-Entity Management by a partner called Binary Stream. And what they've added is functionality that allows you to use Global Dimension 1 as an entity code. And then it automatically builds due to and due from entries so that you can operate all of these legal entities inside of one Business Central company. And these due to, due from entries make sure that each company's trial balance stays balanced to 0.
Sounds
Automatically.
Nice. Yeah.
Right?
Sounds really nice.
So yeah, it's a great feature. And again, these are the scenarios where there's a corporate headquarters that's doing like shared services for payables, receivables, bank management.
Yeah.
Like they have one bank account at the corporate headquarters and they're processing cash payments from customers across all 10 companies, right? So that does require an app.
So these 4 scenarios pretty much cover any option or any scenario that would present itself, right? From a business standpoint, there's really nothing being left out here.
Correct. Yeah. The only scenario I think we're leaving out, which you touched on earlier, is international.
Oh.
So there's a legal entity that's in Spain or Thailand or somewhere, right?
But most likely they have their own.
They're going to have their own instance, their own tenant. They're going to have their own independent data. Now, what they would have to do if you're going to consolidate, they would have to export their consolidation data file, and then you would have to import that file into the consolidation company
Gotcha.
in the US, let's say if you're based in the US.
Yeah.
Right. So you still can consolidate GL data up to a parent level. But
Gotta have the consolidation.
but in terms of shared data management, where certain master data is shared across the companies, I do not believe you can share the data across tenants.
Not yet.
I may be speaking out of school on this, and maybe next month we'll have to clarify that you can indeed set it up to share data across a tenant
Yeah.
or to a different environment, but I don't believe that's there today. So it's just, let's put this way, something to check out.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you have that scenario, you should check it out. But what I think this, what this new feature does is it really gives companies more options.
Yeah.
Right? The ability to operate more efficiently, yet with the independence that you need in terms of keeping transactional data separate into separate companies. So it's a great feature. I'm kind of working on putting together some diagrams to show what does this look like. I know that, we said we're doing this on a podcast,
Right.
and it's kind of tricky. But I think when you
do
see
really
a
well.
picture
Yeah.
of these 4 scenarios, it makes it a lot more easier to understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but all in all, I mean, you like the new shared master data feature. I think it's really nice. I think it's
I do.
applicable.
Yeah, it's something that I know a lot of businesses look for. And honestly, there's been instances, I believe in the past, where companies have asked for this type of thing. And if we're like, now we don't have that capability, they may just move on to look at other ERP systems.
Was this ever available in the old nav?
Nope.
Nope.
Not delivered by Microsoft as a
Yeah,
standard
right.
feature. No.
Very nice.
So yeah, there's a lot there. But it is something that comes up often in a lot of scenarios. A lot of businesses do have separate legal entities that they need to, they want to keep them separate, but yet they also want to not have to set up something twice, right? And manage 2 different
Of course.
systems. So I think this gives you one more option to have your cake and eat it too. So, but yeah, it's coming out. It's in this part of this new release. And I think unfortunately it is something that maybe does need to be something that you start with at the beginning. You can't if you go,
switch over
oh,
to it.
we're already up and running and we've got 3 companies. How do we start using this?
Yeah.
Not sure yet. Haven't kind of gotten that far down the road. Maybe, we'll have to see what that holds. But
Yeah, we'll just let AI take care of it in the future.
yeah, give it.
All right. Well, I think you did a great job explaining it. So we got a little whiteboard here. I'll include the picture of the whiteboard in the show notes that you guys can see some of Ken's drawings as well.
Good luck reading it.
Well, let's see. What do we got left? We're coming up. We got some
I'm
AI
ready.
snack time.
I'm ready
right?
for a snack.
Yeah. We'll talk about the latest happenings with AI and stuff like that with Microsoft. So kick back, everybody.